Hello, I'm Eliza. My family thought I was broke, too impractical, too dreamy, too financially irresponsible to ever succeed. They mocked me at family gatherings, ridiculed my business ideas, even bet against my startup behind my back. And I let them for years until the day I couldn't cover the dinner bill they insisted I pay, right before my helicopter landed in the parking lot to take me to my investor meeting. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But here's the part they never saw coming. What would you have done if your own mother called you a charity case while expecting you to cover a meal you never wanted to attend? While sitting in a restaurant you secretly owned? Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from today? And more importantly, would you have revealed your success sooner, or would you have waited for the perfect moment like I did? The evening had started predictably enough. I had arrived 15 minutes late to Bellissimo, my family already seated at our usual table by the window. The maitre d' had given me that look, the one that said he recognized me but couldn't quite place from where. I almost told him, almost ended the charade right there. But something held me back. Maybe it was the text I'd received from my sister Vanessa on the drive over. "Mom's on a tear tonight. Brace yourself." I smoothed down my simple black dress, designer, but understated enough that no one would notice, and made my way to the table. My mother Caroline sat at the head, perfectly coiffed as always, her pearls gleaming under the chandelier light. My father Richard was absorbed in his phone, barely looking up as I approached. Vanessa and her husband Greg were already sipping cocktails while my younger brother Tyler was busy charming the waitress. "Finally decided to join us," my mother said, not quite a question. "You're looking comfortable." I kissed her cheek, noting the slight recoil. "Traffic was horrible. Sorry I'm late." "It's fine," Tyler said with a smirk. "Not like you had anything important going on anyway." I slid into the empty chair, the only one with its back to the restaurant. Of course. I reached for the water glass, taking a slow sip as I surveyed the table. They had already ordered appetizers, the most expensive ones on the menu, and 2 bottles of Chateau Margaux, a wine I knew cost over $400 per bottle here. My father finally glanced up from his phone. "Eliza, we were just discussing Vanessa's promotion. Senior VP of Operations at Cartwright now, youngest in company history." Vanessa preened slightly. "It's not that big a deal. Just 5 years of 60-hour weeks and delivering consistent results." "Unlike some people who flit from project to project," my mother added, her eyes sliding meaningfully toward me. I smiled, used to the barb. "Congratulations, Van. That's fantastic news." "It comes with a substantial raise," Greg chimed in. "We're finally pulling the trigger on that vacation home in Aspen." The conversation flowed around me. Tyler's new sports car, my father's golf tournament victory, my mother's charity gala that had raised a record amount, achievements laid out like jewelry for appraisal, each one a subtle reminder of what success was supposed to look like. "And what about you, Eliza?" my mother finally asked, swirling her wine. "Any promising interviews lately?" The question hung in the air. They all turned to me, expressions ranging from mock concern to barely concealed amusement. They thought I was unemployed. Had been thinking that for months now, ever since I'd left my position at Meridian Financial without explanation. I hadn't corrected them when they began their whispered theories. She couldn't handle the pressure. She's probably living off her savings. Always been the dreamer of the family, never practical like the rest of us. What they didn't know couldn't hurt me anymore. "Actually," I began, but Tyler cut me off. "Hey, did you all see that Blake Thompson made the Forbes 30 Under 30 list? His app just hit 5 million downloads." My father's eyes lit up. "Thompson? Isn't he the kid who interned for you that summer, Eliza? Before you left Meridian?" Left. Such a neutral word for what had actually happened. I smiled tightly. Yes, that's him. You could have been his boss right now, my mother said with a theatrical sigh. Instead of whatever it is you're doing these days. I took another sip of water. Blake is very talented. Well, he certainly seized opportunities that others missed, my father said pointedly. The waiter appeared with our main courses: filet, mignon for my parents, lobster for Vanessa and Greg, and an absurdly priced truffle pasta for Tyler. I had ordered the simply grilled salmon, the least expensive entree on the menu, a choice that had not gone unnoticed. Still watching your pennies, I see, Vanessa murmured, not unkindly but with a hint of superiority that set my teeth on edge. Some habits die hard, I replied. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Tyler snorted, or some bank accounts run dry. The meal continued in this vein, each conversation circle inevitably swinging back to my perceived failure. They were relentless in their casual cruelty, dropping comments like, "Remember when Eliza thought she was going to revolutionize financial technology? What was that app called again?" "Firefly," I answered quietly. "Right, Firefly," Tyler laughed. "Burned bright and fizzled fast." My mother patted my hand condescendingly. "Darling, there's no shame in admitting you aimed too high. Some people are meant to support the visionaries, not be them." I thought about the meeting I had scheduled in less than an hour, about the team waiting for me, the investors flying in specifically to hear my pitch, about the numbers on our latest valuation report, about the fact that Blake Thompson, the very same wunderkind they were so impressed by, had been practically begging to partner with us for months. But I said nothing. I just cut my salmon into neat pieces and listened. As coffee and dessert were served, my father cleared his throat. "Your mother and I have been talking, Eliza. We think it might be time for you to consider coming back to Meridian. I spoke with Jim Cartwright last week, and he mentioned they might have an opening in customer relations. It's not management track, of course, but it's stable. Benefits, structure." I blinked slowly. "You spoke to Jim about me?" "Someone has to look out for your future," my mother interjected. "You're 32, Eliza. This finding yourself phase has gone on long enough." I felt a familiar tightness in my chest, the same sensation I'd experienced that day in the Meridian conference room when my proposal had been laughed down by the executive team. The same feeling I'd had when I'd emptied my savings account to fund the first iteration of Firefly after every bank had turned me down. The same constriction I'd felt sleeping on a futon in my one-room office for 6 months, while the algorithm was being perfected. Vanessa, perhaps sensing my discomfort, tried to soften the blow. "The economy is tough right now, Eliza. There's no shame in taking a step back to regroup. Especially when the step forward didn't quite work out," Tyler added with a smirk. The waiter approached with the check, placing the leather folder discreetly at the edge of the table. My father immediately pushed it toward me. "Your turn, isn't it, Eliza? You skipped the last 2 family dinners." I stared at the black folder. Inside, I knew, would be a bill for well over $800. They had ordered the most expensive items deliberately, knowing it would be my turn to pay. It was a test, one they fully expected me to fail. I reached for the folder slowly, opening it to confirm my estimate. $937.48, including the automatic gratuity for large parties. I could feel their eyes on me, waiting for the moment I would have to admit I couldn't cover it. Waiting for the embarrassed flush, the stammered excuse, the inevitable offer from my father to help out just this once that would come with weeks of subtle reminders about his generosity. My phone buzzed in my purse. A text from Marcus, my project director. "Helicopter landing in 10. Goldman representatives already here. Bringing final prototype." I looked up from the check to find them all watching me expectantly. My mother's eyebrow was raised. Tyler was practically smirking. Even Vanessa looked like she was bracing herself for an uncomfortable scene. "Is there a problem?" my father asked, his tone suggesting he already knew the answer. I could have pulled out my wallet then, could have shown them the black card that would have covered the bill 10 times over, could have ended their little game right there. But something in me resisted. This wasn't just about money. It was about respect, about being seen, about rewriting a narrative they had decided on long ago. "Actually," I said, closing the folder, "there is a small issue." My mother's lips thinned disapprovingly. My father sighed heavily. Tyler didn't even try to hide his snicker. "I knew it," he said. "Little Eliza can't cover dinner. Again." "It's not that I can't," I said carefully. "It's that I need to leave. Right now, I have a meeting." "A meeting?" My mother's voice dripped with skepticism. "At 9:30 on a Friday night?" "A job interview, maybe?" Tyler suggested, mock hopeful. "Night shift at the 7-Eleven?" I stood, smoothing my dress. "Something like that." "Sit down, Eliza," my father said firmly. "Whatever it is can wait until you've settled the bill. That's how responsibility works." The familiar dismissal in his tone made something shift inside me. All those years of being talked over, underestimated, dismissed. All those moments when my ideas were stolen or ignored. All those nights working until dawn while they assumed I was failing. "Actually," I said, "it can't wait. But I promise you the bill won't be a problem." I pulled out my phone, typing quickly to Marcus. "I'm coming out now. Make sure it's visible from the east side of the restaurant." Confused looks passed between my family members. My mother's face hardened. "Eliza Catherine Hamilton, you sit back down right now. You are not walking out on this bill." I smiled, feeling strangely calm. "I'm not walking out on anything, Mother. I'm just going to my meeting. The bill is already taken care of." "What are you talking about?" my father demanded. "We watched you look at it. You haven't given them a card." "I don't need to," I said simply. Just then, the maitre d' approached our table, bowing slightly. "Ms. Hamilton, your transportation has arrived. The chef asked me to inform you that tonight's meal has been added to your house account, as usual." The silence at the table was absolute. "House account?" Vanessa finally managed. I picked up my purse, suddenly aware that other diners were looking our way, some pointing toward the windows where the unmistakable sound of helicopter blades cutting through the night air had become noticeable. "I really must be going," I said. "Investors don't like to be kept waiting." "Investors?" My father looked genuinely confused now. "What investors? What house account?" I leaned down slightly, my voice meant only for our table. "I own this restaurant, Dad. Have for about a year now. It's one of the smaller acquisitions in the Firefly portfolio." Their faces froze in various expressions of disbelief. I straightened, nodding to the maitre d'. "Francois, please make sure my family has everything they need. The usual parting gifts, I think." "Of course, Ms. Hamilton. The chocolates and the signed cookbook as always." Tyler's mouth literally hung open. "Signed cookbook?" "From our executive chef. He was on Top Chef last season, came in second." I glanced at my watch. "Now, if you'll excuse me, I really do have to run. Goldman Sachs waits for no one, not even family dinner." The sound of the helicopter was unmistakable. Now, through the windows, the gleaming black craft was visible, settling onto the far end of the parking lot, its lights illuminating the gathered crowd of impressed onlookers. I walked toward the exit, feeling their eyes on my back. Just before I reached the door, I turned back. They were still frozen in place, staring after me. "Don't worry about getting home," I called. "I've arranged for a car service, Black Lincoln Navigators. They should be waiting out front in about 20 minutes. Plenty of time to finish your coffee." And then I was through the door, the cool evening air hitting my face, the downdraft from the helicopter blades tugging at my hair as I walked with measured steps across the parking lot. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Sometimes silence is the most powerful response. Sometimes the best revenge isn't confrontation but creation. And sometimes the family that dismisses you never realizes they're dining in your restaurant until they see your helicopter land outside. The pilot held the door for me as I climbed aboard. Marcus was already inside, tablet ready, the prototype, secured in its case. As we lifted off, I caught a glimpse of my family through the restaurant windows, still at the table, still staring out at the helicopter that was carrying their supposedly failed relative to a $100 million valuation. Meeting. I hadn't planned the revelation this way. But now that it had happened, I couldn't imagine a more fitting scene. The narrative had finally been corrected, not with words, but with the unmistakable sound of success that even they couldn't ignore. As the city lights spread out below us like a carpet of stars, I felt no triumph, no vindication, just a calm certainty that I was exactly where I was meant to be. Flying high above those who had insisted I would always stay grounded. The view from 1,500 feet above the city was breathtaking. The restaurant lights grew smaller as we banked east, the downtown skyline spreading out before us like a glittering circuit board. I sat back in the leather seat, exhaling slowly, the adrenaline from the restaurant scene gradually ebbing away. That was quite an exit, Marcus said, his usual stoic expression betrayed by the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth. Not your typical family dinner, I take it? I laughed, the sound almost startling in the helicopter's enclosed space. You could say that. Marcus had been with me from the beginning. He'd seen it all, the late nights coding until our eyes burned, the rejections from venture capital firms, the eviction notice on our first office door, the moment our servers crashed during our beta test. He'd never once questioned whether we would succeed, even when I had. The Goldman team is waiting at the Apex Tower, he said, handing me the presentation tablet. Final numbers just came in. Valuations holding steady at $2.01 billion. Billion. The word still felt foreign on my tongue. 2 years ago, we'd been working out of a converted storage unit with salvaged computers and a coffee maker that shorted out every other day. Now, major investment banks were fighting for a piece of what we'd built. I swiped through the deck, double-checking the projections. Did Serena finish the security protocol demonstration? Locked and loaded. She's running final checks now. Marcus hesitated. You sure you want to do this tonight, after what just happened with your family? I looked up at him. Why wouldn't I be? Because normal humans might need a minute after dropping a bombshell like that on their judgmental relatives. I smiled. When have I ever claimed to be normal? The truth was, I did feel something shifting inside me. That moment in the restaurant, watching their expressions change from smug certainty to utter disbelief, had unleashed something I'd been holding back for years. Not just with my family, but in every boardroom where I'd been dismissed, every meeting where I'd been talked over, every pitch session where investors had directed their questions to Marcus instead of me, despite my being the founder and CEO. For so long, I'd believed that silence was strength, that proving them wrong quietly was somehow more dignified than confrontation. But standing there in Bellissimo, watching my family's composure crumble as the helicopter blades chopped through their assumptions, that hadn't felt like revenge. It had felt like freedom. The chopper banked again, circling the gleaming spire of Apex Tower. Built just 2 years ago, it was the tallest building in the city, its upper floors home to the most prestigious financial and tech firms. And tonight, its penthouse conference room was hosting a meeting that could change everything. Not just for me, but for the entire financial technology sector. 2 minutes to landing! The pilot's voice crackled through our headsets. I tucked the tablet into my bag and straightened my shoulders. Time to make history. Again, Marcus added with a rare grin. The helicopter descended smoothly onto the rooftop helipad, its skids touching down with barely a bump. Through the window, I could see a small, welcoming committee waiting. 2 men and a woman in immaculate suits, huddled against the rotor wash. Goldman's finest, Marcus murmured, plus their tech specialist. And they came to us, I whispered, still not quite believing it. The pilot cut the engines, and the blades began to slow above us. Before stepping out, I took a moment to close, my eyes centering myself. This wasn't about my family anymore. This was about Firefly, the company that had gone from laughingstock to unicorn in under 3 years. But even as I prepared to step into one of the most important meetings of my career, my mind flashed back to where it all began, not in that storage unit office or even at Meridian Financial, but much earlier, in the bedroom of a 12-year-old girl who'd just received her first computer. I remember that day with crystal clarity. The ancient desktop had been a hand-me-down from my father's office, obsolete before it even reached my room. "Don't get too attached," he'd warned. "It's just until we find something better for the den." But to me, it might as well have been a portal to another dimension. I spent hours learning its language, taking it apart, understanding its architecture. By 14, I was building my own programs. By 16, I'd coded a simple investment tracker that my math teacher suggested I develop further. "You've got a knack for this," Mr. Abernathy had said, the first person to ever recognize something in me beyond the quiet, unremarkable middle child of the Hamilton family. When I showed the program to my father, his response had been predictable. "Computers are a hobby, Eliza, not a career, especially for women. Focus on your business classes." I did focus on business, not because he told me to, but because I had already glimpsed how technology and finance could intersect, how the right algorithm could democratize what had always been an exclusive, intimidating world. College scholarships followed, then an internship at Meridian Financial, where I quickly moved from the IT department to product development. I was building a reputation, slowly but surely. Not the meteoric rise that my siblings enjoyed in their fields, but steady progress that satisfied me, if not my family. Then came the day everything changed. I discovered a pattern in the way financial advisors were allocating client resources, inefficiencies that were costing customers thousands while benefiting the firm. I developed a solution, an algorithm that could optimize these allocations automatically, saving clients money while actually increasing the firm's efficiency. I spent months refining it, preparing the presentation, gathering data to support my findings. When the day came to present to the executive board, I was nervous but confident. This wasn't just a good idea, it was transformative. 10 minutes into my presentation, the CEO interrupted me. "This is all very interesting, Eliza," Harold Winters said, not bothering to hide his boredom. "But we have a system that works. Clients don't understand algorithms. They want the human touch." He glanced at his watch. "Let's move on to Marcus's proposal for the new client portal." Marcus, then a fellow product manager, had looked as stunned as I felt. His proposal wasn't even fully developed yet, while mine was ready to implement. But he was the CEO's nephew's roommate from Princeton, and I was just me. I sat through the rest of the meeting in silence, watching as they enthusiastically endorsed Marcus's half-formed idea. When the room cleared, he'd approached me awkwardly. "That was messed up," he'd said. "Your algorithm is brilliant." I'd gathered my papers, numb with disappointment. Apparently, brilliant isn't enough. "What if it could be?" he'd asked. "What if we took it somewhere else?" That conversation had led to late nights working on what would become Firefly. We refined the algorithm, expanding its scope beyond simple allocation to comprehensive financial planning accessible to anyone with a smartphone. Marcus brought in Serena, a cybersecurity expert he'd known from college. We worked in secret for months, using Meridian's resources when we could, bootstrapping the rest. When we finally had a working prototype, I made one last attempt to sell it to Meridian. This time, I didn't even get a meeting with the board. Harold's assistant delivered the news. The executive team doesn't see a market for this product at this time. I resigned the next day. Marcus and Serena followed a week later. We pooled our savings, rented the storage unit, and Firefly was officially born. My family's reaction had been unanimous. I was throwing my career away on a pipe dream. Why leave a prestigious firm for a long-shot startup? Why reject stability for uncertainty? Why couldn't I just be content with the path they'd all succeeded on? The helicopter ride was a nice touch, the woman from Goldman said as we stepped into the elevator that would take us down to the conference level. Her name was Vivian Chen, head of their fintech investment division. Though I admit, after reviewing your sustainability commitments, I was half expecting an electric car. I smiled. The helicopter is for special occasions. Today qualified. Family dinner gone wrong? She asked with unexpected perception. Something like that. Been there. She checked her phone. The team's ready when you are, including some surprise guests who insisted on joining when they heard we were meeting with Firefly. The elevator doors opened to reveal a sleek reception area where at least a dozen people in business attire were mingling, drinks in hand, more than we'd expected. I spotted the distinctive silver hair of Jeffrey Winters, Harold's younger brother, and Meridian's current COO. I froze momentarily, but Marcus's hand at my elbow steadied me. Funny how they couldn't see a market for our product 2 years ago, he murmured, but now they're crashing our investment meeting. Vivian led us into the conference room, where more executives waited. The energy shifted as we entered, conversations halting as all eyes turned to us. To me? Ms. Hamilton? Jeffrey Winters stepped forward, hand extended. I don't know if you remember me. Jeffrey Winters, I said, accepting his handshake. Meridian Financial. We've met several times, though you might not recall. I was in product development under your brother for 5 years. A flash of recognition quickly masked. Of course. Harold mentioned you'd struck out on your own. Quite successfully, it appears. Quite, I agreed, feeling a strange calm settling over me. The same calm I'd felt in the restaurant with my family. The certainty that came from knowing exactly who I was and what I'd built, regardless of who recognized it. The meeting proceeded with a fluidity that would have seemed impossible 3 years ago. I presented our technology without apology or qualification. I fielded questions with authority. When Jeffrey attempted to suggest that our security protocols might not be robust enough for institutional clients, I didn't hesitate. Mr. Winters, with all due respect, Firefly's encryption algorithm has been vetted by the top cybersecurity firms in the country. We process over 5 million transactions daily with 0 breaches. Our security exceeds federal banking standards by 40%. But perhaps Meridian's concerns stem from the 3 ransomware attacks your system suffered last quarter? A murmur ran through the room. Those attacks hadn't been publicized, a fact I knew because Serena still had contacts in Meridian's IT department. Jeffrey's face reddened. How did you— Information security is our business, Mr. Winters. Perhaps it should be more of a priority for Meridian as well. Vivian Chen coughed, poorly disguising a laugh. The dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the former employee desperate for validation. I was the CEO of a billion-dollar company that they wanted a piece of. As the meeting concluded, with both Goldman Sachs and 3 other major investors expressing serious interest, in our upcoming funding round, Jeffrey approached me again. Eliza, might I have a word in private? I glanced at Marcus, who gave a subtle nod. He would handle the remaining details with the Goldman team. 5 minutes, I agreed, following Jeffrey to a small breakout room adjacent to the main conference area. Once the door closed behind us, he dropped the polished executive demeanor. Why didn't you come to me with this? Before you left Meridian? I raised an eyebrow. I did go to Harold, twice. He wasn't interested. Harold is— He searched for the right word. Traditional. I'm not. I've been trying to drag Meridian into the 21st century for years. Your technology, what you've built with Firefly, it's exactly what we need. And yet, when I worked there, my ideas couldn't get traction. When I presented solutions, I was talked over. When I finally created something revolutionary, I was dismissed. I kept my voice level, not accusatory, just stating facts. Jeffrey had the grace to look uncomfortable. The financial industry has systemic issues with diversity, with innovation, with recognizing talent that doesn't fit the traditional mold. Yes, I agreed. It does. But we're changing, he insisted, and we want to be part of what you're building. I studied him, trying to discern if this was genuine or simply a last-ditch effort to get on the right side of what was clearly becoming a major disruptor in their industry. What exactly are you proposing, Jeffrey? He straightened his tie, back in business mode. A strategic partnership. Meridian's client base with Firefly's technology. We have reach. You have innovation. Together, we could transform the industry. Overnight. 3 years ago, this offer would have seemed like validation, like finally being seen. Now it felt like catching a bus I no longer needed to ride. An interesting proposition, I said carefully. Though I wonder why Meridian would suddenly value what it so thoroughly rejected. Because we were wrong, he said simply. And because now everyone else can see what we missed. His honesty was unexpected. I let the silence stretch between us, considering not just the business implications, but the personal satisfaction of having Meridian come to me as a supplicant rather than a savior. Send a formal proposal to Marcus, I finally said. We'll review it alongside our other partnership options. Relief washed over his face. Thank you, Eliza. And, for what it's worth, I'm sorry about how things ended at Meridian. Harold. Can be. Harold is Harold, I finished for him. But I'm no longer the person seeking his approval. As I turned to leave, he called after me. That was quite an entrance tonight. The helicopter. Not everyone could pull that off. I paused at the door. It wasn't about making an entrance, Jeffrey. It was about making a point. Back in the main conference room, the energy was electric. The Goldman team was already discussing next steps, talking percentages and projections, while other investors hovered nearby, clearly hoping to get a word in. Marcus caught my eye across the room and gave a subtle thumbs up. The meeting had exceeded even our optimistic expectations. As I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations and fielding questions, my phone buzzed with incoming messages. I glanced down, expecting updates from Serena or other team members. Instead, I saw 5 notifications from my family. Vanessa. Eliza, call me. We need to talk. Mom. I don't appreciate being ambushed like that. Call immediately. Tyler. WTF was that about? Since when do you own a restaurant? Dad. We should discuss what happened tonight. Privately. Vanessa again. Are you really worth billions? Why didn't you tell us? I silenced the phone and slipped it back into my pocket. They could wait. For years they had dismissed my dreams, belittled my ambitions, and written their own narrative of who I was and what I could achieve. Now that the script had flipped, their sudden interest in my story felt too little, too late. Or was it? A small voice inside me wondered if this could be a new beginning. If success could open a door that had always been closed between us. If being seen as an equal might finally make real connection possible. I pushed the thought aside as Vivian approached with a champagne flute. To Firefly, she said, handing me the glass, and to the woman who wouldn't take no for an answer. I accepted the champagne with a smile. To recognizing value, wherever it comes from. We clinked glasses, and as the bubbly liquid touched my lips, I thought about the long journey from that hand-me-down computer to this moment. About every door that had been closed in my face. About every dismissive comment and condescending pat on the head. about every time I'd been told to aim lower, dream smaller, expect less. And I thought about that helicopter, waiting to carry me back across the city skyline to the life I'd built despite them all. The tangible proof that sometimes the quiet ones are simply gathering strength. That sometimes the dreamers are the ones who change the world. And that sometimes the best way to prove your worth isn't to argue for it. It's to build something so magnificent they can't help but see it. The champagne tasted like victory, but not the kind I'd imagined in my darkest moments. Not the bitter satisfaction of proving others wrong, but the sweeter joy of proving myself right. Of knowing that regardless of who recognized my value, I had always known it was there. As the evening wound down and investors began to disperse, Marcus sidled up beside me. So, back to the office to celebrate with the team? I glanced at my watch. Nearly midnight. Absolutely. They deserved to hear the good news in person. "And your family?" he asked carefully. Those messages looked intense. I thought about the scene at the restaurant hours earlier, about the shock on their faces as I walked out, about the years of dinners where I'd endured their judgment in silence, planning and building and growing beyond what any of them had imagined possible. "They'll keep," I said simply. "Tonight belongs to the people who believed in Firefly from the beginning, the ones who saw what was possible even when no one else did." As we stepped back into the elevator, I caught a glimpse of my reflection in its polished doors. I looked different somehow, not just the tailored dress or the subtle confidence in my posture, but something in my eyes that hadn't been there before. A certainty, a peace. The woman who had entered that family dinner hours ago was gone. In her place stood someone who no longer needed external validation. Someone who had finally, completely stepped into her power. The elevator doors closed, whisking us up toward the waiting helicopter and the team celebration beyond. Behind us, Jeffrey Winters and the other executives who had once overlooked me were still processing what they'd witnessed tonight. Ahead lay the future I had coded into existence, line by painstaking line. And somewhere in between, my family was reckoning with the revelation that the daughter they had dismissed had become a force they could no longer ignore. Let them reckon with it, I thought, as the elevator climbed. I had a company to run, a team to lead, and a vision to fulfill that was far bigger than proving anyone wrong. Success, I was learning, wasn't about making others see your worth. It was about creating something worthy of being seen. The elevator chimed softly as we reached the rooftop. The doors slid open to reveal the night sky, the helicopter waiting like a chariot of modern mythology, ready to carry the unlikely hero back to the kingdom she had built from nothing but determination and code. I stepped forward, not looking back. The past had no hold on me now. Only the future, bright, unbounded, and entirely of my own design. Our office occupied the top 3 floors of a converted industrial building in what had once been the city's manufacturing district. Where textile machines had once clattered and whirred, now rows of developers sat bathed in the blue glow of their monitors. We'd maintained the original architecture: exposed brick, towering windows, steel beams that soared overhead, but infused it with the energy of technological revolution. As the elevator doors opened to our main floor, I was greeted by the sight of our team, nearly 100 people, gathered in the central atrium. Someone had strung fairy lights along the steel rafters. Makeshift banners hung from the mezzanine level, each one bearing our company values. Build bridges, not barriers. Question assumptions. Democratize prosperity. A cheer erupted as Marcus and I stepped into the space. Faces I knew well, people who had sacrificed weekends, holidays, sleep, all beaming with anticipation. Serena rushed forward, her usual composed demeanor cracking with excitement. "Well, don't keep us in suspense." I exchanged a look with Marcus, drawing out the moment. Then I raised my hands. Goldman Sachs is in, I announced, along with Blackstone, Wellington, and 3 others I wasn't expecting. The valuation holds at $2, $1 billion with room to grow after the security protocol launches next month. The room exploded. Developers who typically communicated in nods and half sentences were embracing. The marketing team had somehow produced bottles of champagne from thin air. Our CFO, normally the picture of fiscal restraint, was doing what appeared to be a victory dance with the UX designers. I moved through the crowd, accepting congratulations, returning hugs, hearing snippets of plans and dreams now within reach. This was the family I had chosen, or perhaps that had chosen me. People united not by blood but by belief in a shared vision. Speech, someone called, and the cry was taken up around the room. I hadn't prepared anything. The Goldman meeting had been our focus for weeks. But looking at these faces, some who had been with us since the storage unit days, others who had joined along the way, all who had taken a chance on Firefly when it was just an idea with potential, words rose naturally. I stepped onto the small platform we used for all-hands meetings, waiting as the room quieted. 3 years ago, I began. I sat in a corporate boardroom and watched an idea die. Not because it wasn't good, but because it didn't fit the expected pattern, because it challenged the status quo, because it came from someone they weren't used to listening to. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Many of them had similar stories. That day I made a choice. I could keep pushing against walls that were built to keep people like me out, or I could build a new house entirely, one with doors open to anyone with talent and drive, regardless of their pedigree or connections, or whether they fit the traditional mold of what success is supposed to look like. I gestured around at the space we had created. Look at what we've built together. Not just a company, not just a platform, but a community that values substance over style, innovation over tradition, and inclusion over exclusivity. Tonight, the financial world officially recognized what we've known all along, that Firefly isn't just viable, it's the future. Cheers erupted again, but I raised my hand for quiet. But this isn't just about validation from Goldman Sachs or a number with 9 zeros attached to it. It's about proving that there is no single path to success. That being dismissed, overlooked, or underestimated isn't a barrier. It's fuel. My voice grew stronger, filled with the conviction that had carried me through countless rejections and setbacks. Each of you has a story like mine. Each of you has been told no when you knew the answer was yes. Each of you has faced doubters and critics who couldn't see your vision. But you persisted. You built anyway. You believed anyway. And that persistence in the face of doubt, is what makes Firefly special. I raised a glass that someone had pressed into my hand. So, tonight we celebrate not just a valuation or an investment round, but the vindication of our collective belief that financial empowerment should belong to everyone. That technology can level playing fields. That the future belongs to those with the courage to imagine it differently. The toast that followed seemed to lift the very roof with its energy. As the celebration continued around me, I found a quiet corner, needing a moment to process everything that had happened in the whirlwind evening. Serena found me there, offering a bottle of water instead of more champagne. She'd been with us almost from the beginning, a brilliant security architect who'd left a cushy government job because she believed in what Firefly could become. "Quite a night," she said, leaning against the wall beside me. "Helicopter entrance. At your family dinner, Goldman Sachs meeting, partnership offer from Meridian, and now this." She gestured at the celebration. "How are you holding up?" I took a long drink of water. Still processing. It's a lot. "And your family. I saw you silence your phone earlier." The mention of my family sent a small ripple of tension through me. "They're adjusting to the new reality." Serena snorted. "I bet they are. I'd have paid good money to see their faces when your helicopter landed. It wasn't about them, I said, though even to my own ears the words lacked conviction. Wasn't it? Even a little bit? She raised an eyebrow. Because from where I'm standing, that was a power move worthy of a Hollywood script. I had to smile at her candor. Maybe a small part. Nothing wrong with that, she said firmly. After what you've told me about those family dinners over the years, they had it coming. She wasn't wrong. The questions disguised as concern. The comparisons to my siblings' more traditional successes. The constant implication that my choices were somehow less valid, less serious, less worthy of respect. It felt good, I admitted. In the moment. But now? Now you're wondering if there was a better way? A higher road? I nodded. Here's the thing about the high road, Serena said, her voice gentle but firm. It's only worth taking if it leads somewhere you actually want to go. Sometimes you need to take the helicopter instead. That startled a laugh out of me. Is that your way of saying I did the right thing? I'm saying you did your thing. Authentically, unapologetically you. She clinked her water bottle against mine. And that's always the right choice. As the celebration continued around us, my phone buzzed again in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another message from my family. Instead, it was a notification from the financial news alert I'd set up years ago. Breaking: Meridian financial stocks plummet amid rumors of security breach and exodus of top talent. I clicked through to the article, scanning quickly. According to anonymous sources within the company, several key executives had tendered their resignations following the revelation that Meridian had turned down the technology that became Firefly. The article specifically mentioned Harold Winter's decision to pass on my algorithm, describing it as possibly the most costly missed opportunity in financial technology history. I showed the article to Serena, who whistled low. Karma works. Fast these days, she said. I put the phone away, feeling strangely hollow. This was the vindication I might have dreamed about in those early days after leaving Meridian. The public recognition of their mistake, the tangible consequences of their short-sightedness. But now that it was happening, I found no satisfaction in it. You know what's strange? I said to Serena. I don't care anymore about Meridian, about what Harold thinks, about any of it. She studied me. That's how you know you've truly moved on. When their opinion, good or bad, becomes irrelevant. The realization settled over me with surprising weight. All this time, I'd believed I was building Firefly to prove them wrong. My family, Meridian, everyone who had dismissed me. But that wasn't it at all. I had built it because it needed to exist, because people deserved better tools to manage their financial futures, because I had seen a problem and knew how to fix it. The validation, or disapproval of others, it had never been the point. My phone buzzed again, this time with a message from an unknown number. This is Jeffrey Winters. Harold just resigned, effective immediately. Board has appointed me interim CEO. Our offer stands, but I understand if recent developments change. Your perspective. Either way, what you've built is remarkable. Respect. I showed the message to Serena, who let out a low whistle. The landscape is shifting, she said. What are you going to do? Before I could answer, Marcus appeared, his expression more serious than the celebration warranted. Eliza, there's someone here to see you. Now? It's almost 1 a.m. He nodded, toward the elevator. Said it was important. Family matter. My stomach tightened. I glanced at Serena, who gave me an encouraging nod. I'll handle things here, she said. You go deal with whatever this is. I followed Marcus to the private conference room adjacent to my office. Through the glass wall, I could see a solitary figure silhouetted against the city lights. My father, his usually perfect posture slightly stooped, hands clasped behind his back as he gazed out at the skyline. "Want me to stay?" Marcus asked quietly. I shook my head. "I've got this." He squeezed my shoulder before retreating, closing the door behind him. For a moment, I just watched my father. He seemed smaller somehow, less imposing than the man who had dominated family dinners with his expectations and judgments. Or perhaps, I was simply seeing him clearly for the first time. "The view is something, isn't it?" I said, finally breaking the silence. He turned, startled. "Eliza, Yes, quite remarkable." An awkward pause stretched between us, filled with unspoken words and years of misunderstanding. "How did you find me?" I asked. "Your driver. After you left the restaurant, I persuaded him to tell me where he was taking you next." A faint smile touched his lips. "It took some convincing. Your staff is very loyal." I nodded, unsurprised. We had built Firefly on a foundation of loyalty and trust, values that extended to everyone from our senior engineers to our support staff. "Why are you here, Dad?" He turned back to the window, his reflection ghostly in the glass. "I wanted to see it for myself. What you've built." I waited, sensing there was more. "And I wanted to understand," he continued, his voice unusually hesitant, "how I could have been so wrong about you, about what you were capable of." The admission, so unexpected from a man who prided himself on being right, left me momentarily speechless. He gestured around at the office. "All this time, while we thought you were floundering, you were." "What exactly? Building a billion-dollar company in secret?" "Not in secret," I corrected. "Just not for an audience. There's a difference." He absorbed that, nodding slowly. "Your mother is processing. Tyler is in shock. Vanessa has spent the last 3 hours researching everything she can find about Firefly online." A rueful smile. "She's furious there isn't more." "We've kept a low profile intentionally," I said. "It's not about the press or the accolades." "What is it about then?" he asked, genuine curiosity in his voice. I considered my answer carefully. "Freedom. The freedom to build something on my own terms, without having to justify my vision or conform to someone else's expectations." His eyes, so like my own, studied me with new awareness. "Like our expectations." "Yes," I said simply. "Like yours." He moved away from the window, taking in the details of the conference room, the awards displayed modestly on a side shelf, the framed first-dollar bill from our initial investor, the whiteboard still covered in complex code from a recent development meeting. "You know, when you were little, you used to take apart every electronic device in the house. Clocks, radios, that terrible electronic pet toy Tyler had that wouldn't stop barking." His voice softened with the memory. "Your mother would get so frustrated, but I was always impressed that you could put them back together, usually working better than before." The memory caught me off guard, a rare moment of connection from my childhood that I had almost forgotten. "You never said that," I replied, "that you were impressed." He looked genuinely surprised. "Didn't I? I must have." "No," I said firmly. "You didn't." He absorbed this with a frown. "Well, I should have. Just like I should have listened when you tried to tell me about your ideas at Meridian." He ran a hand through his silver hair, looking suddenly older. "I've never been good at seeing beyond the established path. It served me well in my career, but perhaps it limited me too." The admission hung in the air between us, more powerful for its rarity. "Why did you never tell us?" he asked finally. "About any of this? The company, the success, the helicopter?" He said the last word with a mixture of awe and confusion that almost made me smile. "Would you have understood? Before tonight? I mean, If I had tried to explain what I was building, would you have seen its potential? Or would you have dismissed it as another one of Eliza's impractical dreams? His silence was answer enough. That's why, I said gently. Sometimes people can only see what you've built after it's too big to ignore. He nodded slowly, accepting the truth of it. And the restaurant? Owning the place where we've had family dinners for years? This time I did smile. That was a coincidence, actually. A friend of mine was the previous owner. When he decided to sell last year, he approached me first. I'd mentioned our family traditions there, and he thought I might want to keep it in good hands. So it wasn't some elaborate plan to reveal your success in dramatic fashion? The plan was never to reveal it at all, I admitted. At least not like that. But when Dad pushed the check toward me, knowing I couldn't cover it, I shrugged. Sometimes opportunities present themselves. He winced. We were cruel tonight, and not just tonight. Yes, I agreed, not softening the truth. You were. Another silence fell, this one heavy with recognition. Outside the glass walls of the conference room, the celebration continued, though at a more subdued level as the hour grew late. My father watched the scene, his expression contemplative. They respect you, he observed. Your team. I can see it in how they look at you. Respect is earned, I said. Not inherited or demanded. He absorbed that with a slight nod. A lesson I'm learning rather late in life, it seems. He turned back to me, a question in his eyes. Where do we go from here, Eliza? Is there a way forward for our family after all of this? It was the question I had been asking myself since the helicopter lifted off from the restaurant parking lot. Was there a path to genuine connection with people who had so fundamentally misunderstood me for most of my life? Was it even worth trying to build that bridge? I don't know, I answered honestly. That depends on whether you're interested in getting to know the real me, or just the successful version that fits a narrative you can finally understand. He flinched slightly at the directness, but didn't look away. I'd like the chance to know my daughter. The real one. The one who built all this while I was too blind to see it happening. Something shifted in my chest. Not forgiveness exactly, but the possibility of it. An opening where before there had been only walls. That would be a start, I said carefully. He reached into his jacket pocket and withdrew a small, worn leather notebook. I brought you something. I've had it for years, but I could never find the right moment. He held it out to me. It was your grandmother's. I accepted the notebook, surprised by its weight in my hand. My paternal grandmother had died when I was 10, but I remembered her as the first person who had truly seen me, who had recognized something in me that others missed. Open it, he urged. I gently lifted the cover. Inside, in neat, precise handwriting, were pages of calculations, designs and notes, technical drawings of machinery parts, electrical circuits, mathematical equations. Your grandmother was an engineer, my father said quietly. One of the first women to graduate from MIT in her field. She worked on early computer systems in the 1960s, but had to do most of her work under male colleagues' names. He paused. I never told you because that was how things were done then. Her brilliance was always hidden. When you started showing the same interests, I thought I was protecting you by steering you toward a more traditional path. I ran my fingers over the yellowed pages, feeling a connection across generations. You weren't protecting me. You were limiting me. Yes, he acknowledged simply. I see that now. I closed the notebook carefully, holding it against my chest. Thank you for this. He nodded, then glanced at his watch. It's late. I should let you get back to your celebration. He moved toward the door, then paused. Your mother would like to see the office sometime, if that's permissible. The formal phrasing nearly made me smile. So typical of him, retreating to formality when emotions ran high. I think that could be arranged, I said. Perhaps a proper tour. For all of you. Relief washed over his features. Thank you, Eliza. He hesitated. One more thing. That article about Meridian. Harold's resignation. Was that your doing? I shook my head. The truth has a way of emerging on its own timetable. I didn't need to help it along. He studied me for a moment longer, then nodded, a new respect in his eyes. Good night, then, and congratulations. What you've achieved is extraordinary. After he left, I stood alone in the conference room, my grandmother's notebook still clutched in my hands. Through the glass, I could see my team, still celebrating, still riding the high of the evening's triumph. Beyond them, the city lights sparkled, a constellation of possibilities stretching to the horizon. I opened the notebook again, finding a quote my grandmother had written on the inside back cover. The world is full of people who will tell you what can't be done. Your job is to show them they're wrong, not with arguments, but with achievements. The words resonated through time, a message from one revolutionary woman to another. I hadn't known my grandmother's story, but somehow I had followed in her footsteps anyway. Perhaps some truths are carried in our blood, passed down silently until they find the right moment to emerge. I stepped out of the conference room, rejoining. The celebration, my grandmother's notebook, and her legacy, held securely in my hands. The night had brought more revelations than I could have imagined, more shifts and reckonings than seemed possible in the span of a few hours. But the most important revelation was the one I had found within myself. That true success isn't measured by who finally sees your value, but by creating something valuable regardless of who sees it. That the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't resentment, but excellence. And that sometimes the family we build through shared vision can be as meaningful as the one we're born into. The helicopter sitting on a restaurant rooftop had been dramatic, yes. But the real revolution had been quieter. Lines of code, late nights, unwavering belief in a future others couldn't yet imagine. Not a spectacle, but a sustained commitment to bringing that future into being, one algorithm at a time. I moved through the room, drawn back into conversations, ideas, plans for what came next. Each person I spoke with reinforced what I had known all along, that Firefly wasn't just a company or a platform. It was a community of believers making the impossible possible through collective effort and shared purpose. And as the celebration continued around me, I felt something settle into place. A certainty that transcended validation, a peace that came not from proving others wrong, but from proving myself right. The helicopter might have gotten their attention, but it was what we were building, quietly and persistently, that would ultimately change their world. 3 months passed in a whirlwind of activity. The Goldman Sachs investment had officially closed, injecting fresh capital that accelerated our expansion plans. We'd launched in 4 new countries, doubled our engineering team, and moved forward with the security protocol that was revolutionizing how financial data was protected across the industry. Firefly was no longer flying under the radar. We were soaring in plain sight. The morning sun streamed through the windows of my corner office as I reviewed the quarterly reports. User growth had exceeded our projections by 37%. Our App Store rating held steady at 4.9 stars. The partnership with Meridian, which we had ultimately decided to pursue under Jeffrey's leadership, was bringing institutional credibility that opened doors previously closed to us. A soft knock at my door pulled me from the numbers. Serena stood in the doorway, tablet in hand, an unusual expression on her face. "The team's ready in conference room A," she said. "But there's something you should know before you go in." I raised an eyebrow. "Problem with the presentation?" "Not exactly." She hesitated. "Your family is here. All of them." I set down my coffee mug slowly. I don't have any family meetings on my calendar today. They said something about a surprise. Your assistant wasn't sure whether to send them away or... She trailed off, watching my reaction carefully. In the months since the helicopter revelation, my relationship with my family had undergone a cautious reconstruction. There had been individual conversations, long, sometimes painful ones with each family member. My father had made the most effort, showing genuine interest in understanding Firefly and how I had built it. My mother had struggled more, her pride making it difficult to acknowledge how thoroughly she had misjudged me. Vanessa had swung between competitive resentment and begrudging admiration. Tyler had been the most surprising, approaching me with a business idea of his own, seeking genuine mentorship rather than rivalry. We had begun a new tradition of monthly dinners, not at Bellissimo, which carried too many complicated memories, but at a rotating selection of restaurants where we were all on equal footing. The conversations were sometimes awkward, occasionally tense, but increasingly authentic. But they had never appeared unannounced at my office. Show them to the small conference room, I decided. Tell them I'll be there in 10 minutes. Serena nodded and disappeared, leaving me to wonder what this unexpected visit could mean. Had something happened? Was this an ambush of some kind? Or was it genuinely a well-intentioned surprise? I finished reviewing the most critical reports, made a few notes for the executive team meeting, and then made my way to the small conference room near the reception area. Through the glass wall, I could see them. My father standing by the window, my mother examining the awards display with unreadable intensity, Vanessa typing something on her phone, and Tyler, surprisingly, engaged in animated conversation with one of our UX designers who had apparently been roped in. They looked different here, in my space. Smaller somehow, less intimidating than they had been all my life. Or perhaps I was the one who had changed, growing into a confidence that made their judgment less potent. I pushed open the door and their conversation halted immediately. "This is unexpected," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "Is everything all right?" My father stepped forward. "Everything's fine, Eliza. We wanted to deliver some news in person." He glanced at my mother, who gave a small nod of encouragement. "What kind of news requires the entire Hamilton family to appear at my office unannounced?" I asked, unable to keep a hint of wariness from my voice. My mother smoothed her perfectly tailored jacket. "We've been doing a lot of thinking, Eliza. About the family. About the future. About legacy." The word hung in the air between us. Legacy. A concept that had been wielded like a weapon at countless family dinners. The legacy of Hamilton's success. The legacy I had supposedly been jeopardizing with my unorthodox choices. "Go on," I said, crossing my arms. My father cleared his throat. "Your grandmother's notebook got us thinking. About talents that run in families. About opportunities missed. About patterns we repeat without questioning." Tyler jumped in, his usual sarcastic edge absent. "What Dad's trying to say, in his roundabout way, is that we've made a decision about Hamilton Holdings." Hamilton Holdings was the family investment company, established by my grandfather and currently controlled by my parents. It managed various business interests and real estate holdings, and had long been presented as the crown jewel of the family legacy, one that would someday pass to the next generation. "We're restructuring the board," my father continued, "creating a new position. Chief Innovation Officer." Vanessa finally looked up from her phone. "We want you to take the role, Eliza." I blinked, processing. "You want me on the board of Hamilton Holdings? The same company you never thought I was qualified to have an opinion about?" "Not just on the board," my mother corrected. "In a leadership position, with authority to direct investment strategy for emerging technologies and new ventures." I studied their faces, looking for the catch, the hidden agenda. but all I saw was an unfamiliar earnestness, a collective vulnerability I had never witnessed in my family before. "Why now?" I asked simply. My father exchanged glances with my mother. "Because we were wrong," he said, the admission clearly difficult for him. "About what success looks like, about what matters in business, about you. And because we're not stupid," Tyler added with a hint of his old smirk. "Firefly's market cap is now larger than Hamilton Holdings' entire portfolio. You've built something extraordinary, sis. Only an idiot would continue to ignore that." "What Tyler means," Vanessa interjected with a pointed look at our brother, "is that your vision and approach clearly work. The family company could benefit from that perspective." I walked to the window, needing a moment to process this unexpected development. Outside, the city stretched in all directions, a landscape I had navigated on my own terms despite every obstacle, including the obstacles this very family had placed in my path. "I already have a company to run," I said finally, "one that requires my full attention and commitment." "We're not asking you to step away from Firefly," my father clarified quickly. "This would be advisory, quarterly meetings, strategic guidance, mentorship for new ventures we might support. Your experience and insight, not your day-to-day involvement." I turned back to face them. "And if I said no?" A fleeting expression of hurt crossed my mother's face, quickly masked. "Then we would respect your decision. This isn't an obligation, Eliza. It's an invitation. One we perhaps should have extended years ago." The sincerity in her voice caught me off guard. This was new territory. My family acknowledging my abilities without qualification, offering a seat at their table not as a concession, but as a recognition of value. It was, in its way, as dramatic a reversal as the helicopter landing had been. For them. "I'll consider it," I said finally. "Send me the proposal in writing and I'll review it with my team." Relief visibly washed over them. This probably wasn't the enthusiastic acceptance they had hoped for, but it wasn't a rejection either. It was a professional response, measured, thoughtful, and on my terms. My father nodded. "Of course, we'll have the documents sent over today." An awkward silence settled over the room. We had reached the end of their prepared speech, but no one seemed ready to leave. There was something unfinished about the moment, something that transcended business arrangements and board positions. Tyler, surprisingly, was the one who broke the tension. "So, we've been dying to see this place for months. Any chance of a tour before we go? The legendary Firefly headquarters in all its glory?" I found myself smiling despite my lingering wariness. "I think that could be arranged." The tour that followed was unlike any interaction I had ever had with my family. As I led them through the various departments, explaining our workflow, introducing key team members, demonstrating the technology we had developed, I watched a transformation take place. My father asked thoughtful questions about our security, architecture. My mother engaged with our marketing director about brand positioning. Vanessa found common ground with our operations team about scaling challenges. And Tyler, most surprisingly, bonded instantly with our game design unit, which was developing financial education tools disguised as mobile games. In each area, the team members I had personally hired and mentored rose to the occasion, displaying the confidence and expertise that defined Firefly's culture. I felt a strange pride, not just in what I had built, but in who I had built it with. These people who had taken a chance on a startup when they could have chosen safer paths. These innovators who had believed in my vision when others dismissed it. As we approached the final stop on the tour, our prototype lab where we tested new features, my mother hung back slightly, touching my arm to pause our progress. "They admire you," she said quietly, nodding toward a group of young developers who had greeted me with obvious respect. Not just as a boss, but as a leader. I followed her gaze. "They're extraordinary people. I'm lucky to work with them." "That's not luck, Eliza. That's cultivation." She hesitated. Something I never properly acknowledged in you. Your ability to see potential in others, to bring out their best. The compliment, so unexpected from a woman who had rarely offered unqualified praise, left me momentarily speechless. I used to think success looked a certain way, she continued. Corner offices in traditional industries, conventional paths, predictable milestones. She gestured around at the vibrant, unconventional workspace. But this, what you've created here, it's success on an entirely different level. Not just financial returns, but human impact, purpose, community. I studied her face, seeing something I had never noticed before. A wistfulness, a hint of roads not taken in her own life. It wasn't easy, I said. Building this, especially alone. You shouldn't have had to do it alone, she acknowledged, meeting my eyes directly. We should have been there, supporting you, believing in you. I'm sorry we weren't. The simple apology, delivered without qualification or excuse, felt like the closing of a circle. Not an erasing of the past, but an honest acknowledgement of it. A foundation upon which something new might be built. Thank you, I said simply. That means a lot. She nodded, emotion briefly tightening her features before she composed herself. Now, tell me about this prototype lab. Tyler mentioned something about virtual reality financial planning. The rest of the tour proceeded, with a lightness I hadn't anticipated. As we concluded in the main atrium, where a life-sized version of the Firefly logo, a stylized flame that seemed to change colors depending on the angle, hung suspended from the ceiling, my family gathered together, looking up at the symbol of what I had created. It's remarkable, my father said. All of it. It really is, Vanessa agreed, for once without a competitive edge in her voice. Tyler grinned. So when do we get company Firefly accounts with all the premium features? I laughed, the sound surprising even me. I think that could be arranged. As they prepared to leave, my father hung back. There's one more thing, he said, handing me a thick envelope. Your grandmother's research, the parts that never got published under her name. I had it all digitized and collected. He cleared his throat. I thought maybe Firefly might find a way to honor her work. Bring it into the light. I accepted the envelope, touched by the gesture. I'd like that, very much. After they left, I returned to my office, the envelope clutched in my hands, my mind spinning with the morning's unexpected developments. Through the glass walls, I could see the company in motion, engineers collaborating, designers sketching, analysts reviewing data. The living embodiment of the vision I had refused to compromise. My phone buzzed with a message from Marcus. Executive team ready when you are. Big news to share. I gathered my notes and headed to conference room A, where our leadership team waited. As I entered, the animated conversations quieted, all eyes turning expectantly toward me. Sorry for the delay, I said, taking my place at the head of the unexpected family meeting. Serena raised an eyebrow. Everything okay? Surprisingly, yes. I set down my materials. But we have more important matters to discuss. The Asia expansion? The institutional platform launch? Marcus cleared his throat. Actually, there's something else we wanted to talk about first. He exchanged glances with the others. We've been working on something. A surprise. I folded my hands. I've had enough surprises for one day, I think. Serena grinned. You'll like this one. Promise. At her nod, our CFO, Brian, handed me a folder emblazoned with the Firefly logo. Inside was a document I didn't immediately recognize. Some kind of financial structure diagram with Firefly at the center, connected to a foundation. What am I looking at? I asked. The Firefly Foundation, Marcus explained. A separate nonprofit entity funded by 1% of all company revenue, dedicated to increasing financial literacy and technology access in underserved communities. I looked up, surprised. When did we develop this? We've been working on it for months, Serena said. Ever since the Goldman investment closed. We wanted it to be solid before we presented it to you. I scanned the document more carefully. The foundation's structure was impressive, thoughtfully designed with clear objectives, measurable outcomes, and a governance model that ensured it would remain true to its purpose regardless of what happened with the parent company. This is, I searched for the right word, extraordinary. But why keep it from me? Our head of people, Dana, spoke up. Because we wanted it named after you. The Eliza Hamilton Foundation for Financial Empowerment. But we knew you'd never agree if we asked directly. I blinked, genuinely taken aback. You're right, I wouldn't have. Which is exactly why it should bear your name, Marcus insisted. This company exists because you refuse to accept artificial limitations on technology, on access to financial tools, on your own potential. The foundation should carry that same spirit. I looked around the table at these people who had become so much more than colleagues, who had shared the struggles and triumphs of building something unprecedented, who understood the deeper purpose behind the code and algorithms. I don't know what to say, I admitted. Say yes, Serena urged. Let your story inspire others. Not just the successful ending, but the challenging journey. The persistence it took to get here. I thought about my grandmother's hidden contributions, documented in the envelope my father had given me. About how different her path might have been if she had found the support to shine in her own right. About all the potential Elizas out there facing their own dismissive families, their own skeptical executives, their own internal doubts. Yes, I said finally. On one condition, we establish a specific program within the foundation named after my grandmother, the Margaret Hamilton Fellowship for Women in Financial Technology. Smiles broke out around the table. Dana made a note. Consider it done. The meeting proceeded, covering our expansion plans, product launches, and strategic initiatives. But something had shifted, not just in the foundation discussion, but in how I viewed the company itself. Firefly had grown beyond my personal redemption story. It had become a vehicle for transformation much larger than one person's journey, from dismissed to distinguished. As we wrapped up, I remained at the table, watching as my executive team filed out, already implementing the decisions we had made. Through the glass wall, I could see the afternoon sun illuminating the workspace, casting long shadows across the industrial floors where hundreds of people were building the future I had once only imagined. My phone buzzed with a notification. The final documents had arrived from Hamilton Holdings, formalizing their offer of the board position. I opened the email, scanning the terms. They were more than fair, respectful of my time, clear about expectations, generous in compensation. But it was the personal note from my father attached to the formal documents that caught my attention. Eliza, this position was created for you, but it is not a gift. It is a recognition of value that we should have seen long ago. Whether you accept or decline, know that your place in the family, and in its legacy, is secure. Not because of what you've built, but because of who you are. The helicopter got our attention. Your character earned our respect. Dad. I set the phone down, struck by how dramatically the landscape had changed in just 3 months. The family that had once dismissed me now sought my guidance. The company that had once rejected my ideas now pursued partnership. The financial world that had once ignored me now highlighted my innovations. But those external validations, satisfying as they were not the true measure of success. The real victory lay in the internal journey, from self-doubt to self-belief, from seeking approval to creating value, from accepting limitations to redefining possibilities. I picked up my grandmother's notebook, running my fingers over the worn leather cover. Inside were the thoughts and innovations of a woman who had never received the recognition she deserved in her lifetime, who had worked in the shadows while others claimed the spotlight, who had perhaps accepted that as the natural order of things in her era. But she had kept working anyway, kept solving problems, kept pushing boundaries, not for acclaim, but because the work itself mattered, because contribution transcended recognition, because some truths demand to be pursued, regardless of who acknowledges them. In that moment, I understood with perfect clarity what my journey had really been about. Not proving my family wrong, but proving something far more important right, that value doesn't require validation to exist, that worth isn't determined by witnesses, that the most powerful response to being underestimated isn't resentment, but creation. The helicopter landing had been satisfying, yes. A dramatic punctuation to years of silent building. But it wasn't the point of the story. It was merely a moment when the invisible became visible, when the reality I had been constructing all along finally became impossible to ignore. I returned to my office and walked to the window, gazing out at the city where my life had unfolded, from the childhood bedroom where I'd taken apart electronics, to the Meridian boardroom where my ideas were dismissed, to the storage unit where Firefly was born, to this tower where it now thrived. On my desk, amid the reports and prototypes, sat a small, unassuming object, a paper towel folded into the shape of a bird. One of our customer service representatives had made it during a team-building exercise months ago, a playful reference to the company name. I had kept it as a reminder of the culture we were building, creative, resilient, transformative. From paper towel to bird, from rejection to renaissance, from invisible to undeniable. As the afternoon light bathed the city in gold, I thought about all the invisible builders out there, people working in quiet determination on ideas others can't yet see. People facing doubters and critics and family dinners where their dreams are dismissed as impractical. People who continue anyway, not because they seek validation, but because they glimpse possibilities others have overlooked. To them, my story wasn't about a helicopter or a billion-dollar valuation. It was about the courage to build without applause, the persistence to continue without encouragement, the vision to see beyond present limitations to future transformations. The greatest power we possess isn't the ability to prove others wrong, it's the determination to prove ourselves right. Not through arguments or resentments or dramatic reveals, but through the patient, persistent work of creating something meaningful. Something that adds value whether or not that value is immediately recognized. My family had laughed when they thought I couldn't pay for dinner. Then my helicopter had landed outside the restaurant. But the true victory wasn't in their surprise, or my vindication. It was in all the unseen moments between, the late nights coding, the rejected pitches, the failed iterations, the team building, the problem solving, the quiet conviction that what I was creating mattered, regardless of who could see it. That was the real story worth telling. That was the legacy worth building. That was the truth that had carried me from dismissed to distinguished, not in a single dramatic moment, but in the 1,000 quiet choices to continue creating even when no one was watching. And in the end, perhaps that was the most powerful revelation of all, that success isn't measured by who finally sees your worth, but by how faithfully you honor the vision only you can see. I turned from the window, back to the work that awaited, not with the desperate need to prove something, but with the settled confidence of someone who had already proven the only thing that truly mattered. That value needs no validation to exist. It simply is. And when created with persistence and integrity, it eventually becomes impossible to ignore. The helicopter had gotten their attention. But it was what I had built, day by day in the shadows, that had ultimately changed their world and mine. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.